Welcome to the June 14th, 2024 Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. It's 10 o'clock. I call the meeting to order. I think we'll start off with introductions. Actually, maybe we could just go around the room because we have, is it Ben?
Ben.
Okay. Maybe you can start.
Hey, Ben Pepe with Pennoni Engineering.
And can you just spell your last name for me?
PEP.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
And
Jeff Elwood with Carl.
John String with police department.
Andrea Deutsch, Mayor.
I'm Jean Borak, Chair of Public Health and Safety.
Mike Salenson, Member of the Public Health and Safety Committee.
Matt West, Borough Manager.
Al Gazzardo, Assistant Borough Manager.
All right. And with that, I'll start with the first item on the agenda, which is the approval of the minutes for May 10th. Can I get a motion?
I guess it's me. I will move to approve the minutes of the PHS Committee for May 10th, 2024.
And I will second. All those in favor? Minutes are approved. Moving on to the second item, presentation item, traffic study for Dudley and Price Avenue. Do you want to start with the
Sure.
background? Okay.
Sure. So this, if you remember, this committee, is it 2 months ago, I believe, authorized or recommended that council authorize the borough's traffic engineer to conduct a traffic safety study for the intersections of Dudley and Price Avenues. And thankfully, council approved that request, and we turned our traffic engineers loose on that intersection. And we are fortunate to have the traffic engineer who conducted that study and who crafted that report in attendance today. And I would turn it over to Ben so he can walk us through the highlights of that study.
Hi, everyone. So I sent out a memo on June 4th stating my findings. So when looking at the intersection, the volume doesn't really meet requirements to install a stop sign, but when I took a look at the sight distance for the intersection, there was many issues and it didn't meet requirements, mostly due to the parking too close to the corners of the intersection, and also some shrubbery and fencing, but mostly due to the parking. When I was actually out there, I noticed a couple near misses from people that were stopped at, I think it was stopped on Dudley, and then they were going through on Price, and it looked like many times that people were slowing down, and it almost caused a lot of accidents. So we were recommending to install the stop signs at the intersection.
And that was noticed just in that 3-hour time frame?
I went out between 3 and 6 p.m. The peak volume p.m. So yeah, I didn't notice too much speeding. I went out with actually a radar gun. The highest speed I calculated was 33, but most people are actually going the speed limit or under that. So speeding really wasn't an issue. It was more sight distance and not knowing whether people were stopping, coming to the intersection, or some people believe that it was an all-way stop to begin with. So the confusion it causes, I think, would just be preferred to install another stop sign.
2 stop signs, right?
Well, 2 stop signs,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
So in your opinion, is it not feasible for sight distance to be improved?
It would reduce a lot of parking. We'd have to probably remove at least 3 parking spaces on either side on every corner, which there is a good amount of parking on that street. So
That's 3 per corner, you said?
roughly, yeah.
And I saw the minimum sight distance wasn't met for both directions on Dudley for north and southbound.
Yeah, it didn't meet. It wasn't able to meet that.
Northbound seemed particularly bad, and that's where that accident happened.
Yeah, looking at accident reports, there was 3 accidents within a 3-year period, roughly 1 a year, and it was all due to failing to stop at that stop sign.
And just to define the crashes, those were reportable crashes.
Those are reportable crashes,
Right.
yes, which means either the vehicle needed to be towed or there was an injury,
Right.
so.
Okay. And I think it's really significant that you had also witnessed several near misses in that very short time.
Within a short period of time while I was
Yeah,
out there.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, in terms of sight distance, would you also recommend like improving that? Because that's a,
With the addition of the all-way stop, sight distance wouldn't be such large an issue because everyone would be required to stop. So I think it wouldn't be as significant. You need to have at least 20 feet from the stop sign to the first parked car, so we may have to reduce a few parking spaces, but not nearly as much as if we just tried to improve sight distance throughout. So that may have to be included.
In installing 2 new stop signs, would that also include, just looking at the geometry here on Google Maps, it looks as though it's at least 1 car length from the stop sign that would need to be eliminated. Looks like on Price, they're parking right up close to where the stop sign would be, so maybe the elimination of at least 1 parking spot per location?
Yes, that's what I'm
Okay.
anticipating, yeah.
So you need to do that
Yeah.
triangle, and then it would go here and here. There's usually a car there.
that's one price or?
On Price, yeah.
Do you think we should do that simultaneously, or do we put up the stop, assuming we vote to approve the stop signs, do we do the stop signs first, see how that goes before we eliminate the parking, or?
Parking will probably have to be eliminated first before
Okay.
we install the stop signs.
And is there a cost estimate for implementation of the four-way stop?
I don't have a cost estimate off the top of my head for that, no. It wouldn't be too expensive though.
Cost of sign.
Yeah,
paint,
cost of the sign wouldn't be much.
hundreds of dollars. maybe?
Yeah, we're talking hundreds of dollars, it wouldn't be much.
Maybe four
Yeah.
to $500 max.
No more than 1,000 total.
Yeah,
And then the report, I know Cindy talks about this all the time, the report suggested also putting up signs saying four-way stop ahead.
yeah.
That's part of your recommendation. I know Cindy always feels like if you put too many signs up, people don't pay attention. But,
A sign below the stop sign that just indicates always stop.
oh, just on the stop sign itself?
Yeah, it would be
Okay.
below it.
Okay,
It-
not a separate sign.
No, it wouldn't be a separate sign.
Okay.
Since it's a new stop sign and people sometimes drive without thinking, would it be advisable to put like flashing lights above the new stop sign just to make sure people are aware for a temporary period?
I don't think that's necessary.
You don't?
No.
You think?
The cost of that would be,
I mean, we have them, that's what we did when we installed the four-way up here at Conway
Yeah.
and Windsor, you know, we
Just
left
since it's a
them on
new
there
sign and
for-
people who've been driving this way for years may, it may, surprise them.
if the public works has it available, that could be done, sure.
Just for a temporary,
Yeah.
just until people start getting used to a stop
Get
sign.
used to it, and
Yeah.
that makes sense.
How long did we have it up for, like here, was it a couple months, right?
About a month.
Month?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we could probably just do something similar then, a month or.
Since it's a new traffic pattern, just, people who habitually drive that route, it's just a, hey, new thing,
Yeah, I
little.
agree.
And we already have it in inventory.
Yeah, if it's already
Jeff, what does it look like?
available.
They're small, I mean, they're yay big. A battery pack, will clip onto the signpost itself, and then we just attach the red light, it's like the size of a hockey puck that sits at the top of the sign, and we just flash.
Okay. And how long did we keep them out here?
Just shy of a month.
Month? Okay.
Probably with the dead end section of Price, we could keep that up for a week or two maybe. There's not a ton of folks who travel that way. Coming west down Price towards Dudley, we can keep that up, for a few weeks.
I just think it's,
I agree.
extra,
Definitely.
pay attention.
But, essentially, the traffic study seems to line up with the residents' experience as well, and so there's no discrepancy there.
No, there was a lot of confusion at the intersection, I noticed. with even people slowing down to almost a crawl going through it,
Right,
where people that were stopped at the stop sign kind of took that as a I can go,
right.
which caused even further confusion. So
And the car is slowing down to make a turn.
to make turns,
Yeah.
yeah, it's tricky. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I agree.
Okay, any other questions or thoughts? Did you also have, an update for the Iona Avenue?
Oh, yes, I did. So I went out there and took a look. I noticed that Public Works installed one of the rubber speed humps. So when we were discussing earlier, it was mentioned that there has been a reduction in traffic there from just installing a speed hump with the signage, which is a good thing. But that speed hump is in PennDOT regulation, so a new one would have to be installed, a permanent asphalt. But the cost of that would be relatively low, around $2,000 to $3,000. But I think that would be a good thing to do.
And what about the stormwater pump valves that were
So
presented?
those are still an option to do. We would have to have those designed and created in CAD and all of that. The cost of that would be a little bit more for sure. You would have probably around, I don't have the estimate right off the top of my head, so I don't want to say, but probably around 50,000, I want to say.
So we never received the
We
cost
never,
estimates?
never got beyond the conceptual idea.
Okay.
And so the plans that were submitted showed what could be done. It was just a quick sketch.
Mhm.
According to Mike Schneider, that's as far as it got. They have not been given a direction to take it to design level, so they have not designed anything to be built. So there's no costs associated with it yet.
Well, how does the committee feel about asking for a cost estimate to be able to make a decision on the pump outs at this stage?
I guess how much does the design cost?
I don't think it would be a significant cost to do.
Just the estimate would be, we could do that easily. Just to get an estimate
Yeah.
before we work,
Yeah.
before we get to
Yeah.
design, we can just give you a rough estimate. We can easily do that.
My impression is it would be hard to do stormwater pump outs on Iona just because there's a parking pretty much full up on that,
Up to the corners.
up to those corners,
Mhm.
you know.
And I would- To that point, I was unclear with the schematics that were forwarded, whether or not they included stormwater things in it. Because from the plans, it just looked like it was more pedestrian safety bump outs. I didn't see any integration of stormwater. So I don't know.
Okay,
And if those.
I think it would be hard to lose spaces on that, on those 2 blocks of Iona, because as it is, like, as someone who uses that all the time, because that's how I get it out from where I live, you know, you're already kind of playing, you know, pull over jockeying back and forth when the traffic's coming, especially if there's a school bus or the SEPTA bus, although that's gonna become on the lane. But it's already hard to sort of pull over to the side and find an empty spot so the traffic can come the other way. So if you start taking that, you're gonna lose a couple of openings there. I think it's gonna make it very difficult.
I also think the goal was to reduce volume, which, remember we had looked at what the counts were before and after we installed the temporary speed hump, and it significantly went down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we've already resolved the issue by
Yeah.
the speed hump, then why move forward with an expensive,
I agree.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just to clarify, the 2 bump outs or 2 intersections we were looking at for the bump outs was at Windsor and Iona, and then Meeting House Lane and Iona.
Yes.
And there would be 2 on either side for
Mhm.
both of those intersections.
That's what we had planned. And when it comes to the stormwater, we were gonna do ADA ramps leading to the existing sidewalk, and then between them, the curbing and the existing sidewalk, we would have some sort of landscaping, stormwater, management. within this.
The reason I bring that up is we have 19 stormwater bump outs that we've committed to as part of our MS4. And any time that we can get some cross pollination, if these locations were identified in the MS4 plan with our borough engineer, also with Panoni, that maybe there is an opportunity for us to, okay, maybe it might be a little uncomfortable, might be taking a couple of parking spaces away, but if those were prime locations identified by the borough engineer where we should be doing some rain gardens, maybe there's an opportunity there also.
I think ideally, yeah, we want to take the opportunity of the
Agreed.
2-for-1
Yeah.
and be able to achieve this.
Because they're not cheap.
No.
And on the flip side, if these two locations weren't identified with the 19, then what? Then do we add them in, or is that
Right.
something we need to?
I think I'd want to know. I
Or
certainly don't want to
swap
spend
out.
the extra money if they weren't part of the routine. And I don't get the sense that that's a particular area that has stormwater.
I don't think
issues.
so
it's
either.
not-
Pretty flat.
So these bump outs are not for volume,
I know,
they're for sediment,
I know.
right? And so anything that we can do will help our MS4
Right.
application. So
It's also to improve sight lines and
The
also
bump-
to calm the traffic.
Yeah, the bump outs would definitely,
Yeah.
in reducing parking spaces would give clear sight lines for traffic for sure at the intersections. But yes, to your point, the stormwater, the bump outs are more for water quality than actual regulation.
which is why it takes so many of them
Yeah, exactly.
to make a dent.
Did you have a question
Yeah,
related
just
to?
about the no-turn sign from Windsor to Iona. That was part of the recommendation as well.
The no left turn as well.
No-turn.
That would help to reduce traffic, but if we had the speed bump that already kind of helped to reduce a lot of the traffic, it may not be necessary. It'd be up to you guys if you would want to keep that.
So question, so we all live on Iona.
Mhm.
So is there an official report that shows the reduction in volume? I don't think I've seen that.
Did you guys do a traffic count?
We are.
So the last one I saw was from a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
The volumes were pretty substantial, it was like 400 cars an hour coming down in front of our houses. So I'd be curious to see if there's an update to that. From without any counts, there's still significant volume on it.
Okay, yeah, we would.
So, yeah, so
Still
the
significant.
counts were taken after the speed bumps were installed,
Mhm.
and it was like a 60% reduction
It
in
was-
volume.
It was a significant drop. It was presented at one of the meetings.
Yeah,
Um,
and we
Is that-
actually thought it was a fluke because it was such a drastic drop in volume.
Mhm.
And we had them take it for a few additional weeks, and it stayed consistent. Now, that was almost a year ago, so.
Well, the original one was a year ago, and then I think the speed bump went in the fall of last year. I think October. I think that's the timing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so if there's
It was-
some counts that happened
Yeah,
after
last year.
October,
The,
if you could point us
The
to.
chief has a hard copy somewhere, and where he's looking for it.
Okay.
Yeah,
that'd
we'll
be-
see if we can get you.
And I apologize, I know there's a protocol of same public comments in front, so, but since we're talking this topic, if you don't mind if I have a few other comments. So the second is, when we talked to the engineer, so we read the report, right? And you had a concern about parking spaces. He said one of the nice things about Windsor and Iona is you wouldn't have to take out any additional parking spaces, because there's so much no parking already kind of integrated into that intersection.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so, yeah.
I haven't looked at what existing ones. Oh, so there is a lot of room at the intersection of the corners
Yes.
to create those bump outs. So
Yes,
it's likely that no parking spaces would be taken.
correct.
Okay. That's what it's supposed to
But
be.
my concern was
Oh.
slightly different, which is,
You'd have to relook
so when if you drive down the street, you gotta be able to pull to the side to let the traffic come the other way, especially if there's snow or whatever. Right now, there are those empty spaces where you can do that, and if we do the bump outs, you're not gonna be able to
Yeah,
pull to the side, and what do you do if a car's coming?
So that was a
The opposite
conversation,
direction.
that was a direct question.
Yeah.
There's a ton of residents, right, that banded together just to talk through this. And that, when we talked to the engineer, he said that's not a concern.
Okay.
He looked at it, he said that's not a concern. It should not be a concern.
Okay, I'll take
And then he said, well, and part of it is we want it to be a little tougher to drive down the street.
Right,
That's the whole point of this thing, right?
Yeah.
But he explicitly said that is not a concern.
I just
can't
get
com- I can't
concerned, you know, when the
comment on,
trash trucks, you know, what
Yeah.
I see is it becomes a problem when the trash trucks are coming down or the school buses are coming down.
Bump
and-
out or no bump out,
Right.
there's always gonna be
You
the head
gotta be
on.
able to get to the side and let them through.
Yeah, and that's always gonna happen, in my opinion. In fact, the other day, the kids had to walk up a block because the trash truck was on one corner and
Way on the other side.
Yeah.
the school bus was here, and there was no way that there was gonna be a tiebreaker, so the school bus had to turn. That's
Yep,
always-
I've seen,
Yeah.
I've seen it happen.
So, okay. And so, like, I can't comment on Meeting House and Iona, that was the other recommendation. And that's a bus stop, I mean, that's a huge
Big bus.
elementary school bus stop.
Yeah.
I do
For-
want
for
to
kids, everyone.
officially open it up to public comment just because we're voting on.
I'm sorry, yeah, like I said, I apologize.
So is there any comment, we're voting on the, whether or not to forward this to council for consideration for the Dudley Avenue, Dudley and Price intersection hallway stop. So is there any public comment on that?
Real quick. Thank you very much. Joe Stratton, I live on the corner of Dudley and Price. And once again, thank you again for all your attention to this. And your descriptions were exactly what I had seen. It's more of a perception issue. People unsure if somebody's going to stop, they're supposed to stop when they're on Price where there's no stop sign. The Dudley drivers who are confused and they just entered the intersection for near misses.
I saw that within the 3 hours I was there a couple times, so I agree.
And it feels, I completely agree. As a non-traffic engineer, the four-way stop sign seems like the best solution. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think we can
Yeah.
move on to action item.
Making a motion.
There are people online, so I would just
Oh, I'm
ask.
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, is there any public comment online on this particular agenda item?
No, it doesn't look like it. Okay.
So I would ask this committee for a recommendation of whether you support it,
Yeah.
and then the recommendation to forward this to council with support,
So
just to be clear to council.
I'd like to move to accept the traffic study recommendation as presented by Benoni and to make a recommendation to council that we accept the recommendation for a four-way stop sign at the intersection of Price and Lindley, along with the improvement to the sidewalks.
I second. All in favor?
It's an easy one, there's two of us.
So that's approved. And then we also need to talk about the installation of the streetlight on the 100 block of Dudley. Matt or Jeff?
Yeah, I can start it, and if Jeff has any other additional color, he can jump in. It was this, excuse me, there is a utility pole located on the 100 block of Dudley, down close to Hammer Point, right over here, up a block, where there used to be a light fixture, a street light fixture. Prior to somewhere around the time when we switched over to LEDs, a tree had knocked it down, it was there, never got identified, it got lost in the mix, it didn't get identified with the streetlight program. It was drawn to our attention by Councilmember Spear, who actually went and did a pretty cool live stream about the situation, how dark it was, and through our Public Works Manager, Jeff Eldon, went out and discovered that, yep, you're right, we used to have a light there. We went through the process of looking at how much it would cost to replace, and there is a memo included in the meeting packet which listed roughly around $1,400. That's soup to nuts install to match all of the existing LED light standards. And we currently, this was as of mid-May, we have a significant amount of money available in our street light electric usage and repair line item from which this would be funded. So since this is a new item, it was brought to the attention to borough staff, thought it would be appropriate for committees to review and make a recommendation to council.
And the total cost of that?
Total cost was $1,407. So this was brought, that was brought before the infrastructure committee at their April meeting, and we forgot to bring it to the May public health and safety meeting, so we're a month behind. Just thought there was some cross-pollination with infrastructure and public health and safety, and getting both committees buy-in before it goes to council.
Well, thank you, Jim, for providing that live video stream. That was actually really helpful to kind of see how dark it really was in that block, and it does seem to be a safety issue. Any thoughts?
I'll let you make the motion.
Oh, I move to recommend installation of a streetlight on the 100 block of Dudley Avenue.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
We're just asking if there's any public comment on that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Any
I
public
forgot we
comment?
changed this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any public comment on the 100 block of Dudley streetlight?
I just want to say it's good to have good streetlights so people can walk safely, that it promotes less crime. It's just, well, good lighting is helpful to everybody.
Does anyone online have a comment?
All right, so all in favor? And that item is approved. And moving on to discussion items, we have the single-use product ordinance update. Should I provide that? Or?
Sure, yeah, that'd be good.
Okay. So we have the single-use product ordinance amendment going into effect September 3rd of this year. And in preparation, we're rolling that out, communications to our businesses, and part of the requirement is that the stores will need to post signage at their location. So we work with staff to create that signage, the flyers, and also a web page online, which is at narberthpa.gov/information/single-use product ordinance. So all of that information is provided online, and essentially the change in the ordinance expands the existing single product use ordinance with including a restriction on non-recycled paper bags and styrofoam products and plastic utensils as well. So
Is there a particular place that the sign should be within the business? Should it be up by the register or on the door?
the ordinance says to place it in a conspicuous location at the point of sale. So
I've found some other communities who have recently adopted this. They have these little plastic display, like a letter-size display right next to the cash register. Print one of these things out, slide it in there. It seems to be pretty effective.
So yeah, we do have like a half-page flyer already designed that the businesses can use, so it makes it easier for them if they so choose to post those instead of making their own signs.
If you like, I would be willing, if we print out a number of them, I would be willing to walk around and distribute it to businesses downtown.
I'm willing to do the same.
Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah,
we have other committee members.
To divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
yeah, we could do it together. Yeah.
Yeah, just let us know how many copies you'd like and we can print them out for you.
The easier we can make it for the businesses,
Right.
the better it is.
And then
Okay.
staff has also been working on drafting a letter to go out to the businesses, and.
Yeah,
so-
and Ridgeway will also forward it to him, because he has a distribution list that he can send it out to everyone.
Great.
Okay, so that was it, unless, were there any questions on that? Moving on to the next discussion item is the security camera policy. John, do you have an update on that?
So we've made a couple recommendations for modifications to the current policy to make it more in line with the system that we have currently. The policy was written and some of the requirements that are in there as far as retention and recording of access usage can't be done by our current system. So just to ensure that we are in compliance with our own policy, and recommend some updates, and then also with the potential of increasing, our current camera system to potentially cover, the bathrooms, the field house, things of that nature. We're starting to see some criminal activity that, is costing the borough money and inconvenience. So.
Is that something that you're going to need committee feedback on, the policy revisions to make, put it into compliance?
I don't, as far as the community feedback, I don't think so. It's more of the technical aspect of the
No, I
network.
mean from the committee.
We don't need to approve that, right?
I don't think so. I think,
Matt, do you
Just
have an
internal.
recommendation?
I think it's a policy document, so
Yeah.
it's an internal policy document that doesn't need
Right.
council approval.
Okay.
Okay.
That's my read of it.
I think it does make sense to maybe just run it by Cindy, because I know she was here when that originally the policy was drafted, so she may have some thoughts on that.
okay. And then as far as expanding the system to try to cover some of the things, with the committee's approval, we can request for quotes and look at what sort of infrastructure we need to, increase. I know we talked about Wi-Fi as far as the camera systems.
Yeah, so we were talking about installing cameras, especially in the Narberth Park bathroom areas, to increase security there. I definitely support the installation of cameras there. I think it would help with.
Yeah.
And we're talking property damage, right? Not
Right,
It's
physical
Right,
assaults
vandalism.
or anything.
Correct, it's vandalism,
Just to be clear, since you said criminal activity, I don't want people to think like, we're having assaults down in the park, so.
But at a cost, I mean.
Yeah, no,
it's adding
I'm not minimizing, I just don't want people to, how this can get mistranslated online to like, people
But
thinking,
having,
oh my God, are there assaults?
having
or
cameras
something?
would also
Oh,
dissuade
yeah,
that
it's
as
a
well.
complete
It would have an added benefit, but that's
It's a
not
deterrent.
what's
We
currently
also do
occurring.
appreciate, I know there's been additional police patrols in the area, so I think hopefully that has made a difference as well. So I guess, what are the next steps for that? Would we get the estimates and then?
For which part?
For the camera
Camera?
installation?
Well, Chief Strain and I were talking about that the other day, and maybe even Jeff was on that, I can't remember. It probably makes more sense to add a new service line to that building, because right now we're gonna need to get internet to that building some way, somehow. And it's probably the most cost-effective to install a new service line to that building, so we have internet going there, which means additional billing, an additional bill, get that set up, modem, which then connects to the camera, which then we can receive. So it'll cost some money, I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but that would practically probably be the best approach at this point. Instead of trying to, we don't have the capability, our Wi-Fi doesn't reach to that building. And you need, for quality camera installation, you need a hard line. That's what's recommended.
Okay, if there's nothing else on that, I can move on to the next discussion item, which is the parking system update. And do you have or I know you all have been working together.
Yeah, we've been seeing an increase in the number of permit applications. We're well over 100 at this point. So residents are being informed of it. And I'll show these out. I'm sure that you saw the design. I'll pass them on, but that's the actual hard copy. We're going to start next week. We just got them from the printer yesterday. We didn't want to do it on a Friday, considering that people will be potentially away. So starting Monday, we're going to go out, and any vehicle that's parked in the 2-hour zone, we're just going to drop this on the windshield and the windshield wiper, just as a kind of reminder of, hey, this is changing. And then on the 20, I think it's 26th, 27th, that last Wednesday, Thursday, we'll do the same thing, kind of by midweek. Later in the day, we'll go in the afternoon to try to cover both ends of the enforcement times, just to make sure. And then obviously, we talked about this come July 1, we're going to do warnings and we'll come up with a new flyer to put on if, you know, if they haven't done it.
The only concern I had with that was it might miss the people who are working and are not parked on the streets during the day. They don't return until 6 p.m. or after. So I don't know how we can capture that group.
My only concern was if we did it after 6 p.m., that we might inadvertently confuse people that only park after 6 p.m. and don't park during the enforcement hours to think that they have to get it. We have run into some issues where people are calling up and they're not sure. Just because we put the message out there, people are hearing it and they're unsure of, hey, do I need this? You know, do I need it at a meter or things of that nature? So that would be my only concern, that we basically give the impression if we put this on somebody's car at 8 p.m.
Yeah.
because they really don't need it then.
Yeah, I live on a 2-hour restricted zone, and I know during the day, there's more parking available, and then in the evening, there's less parking available. And that says a lot of the cars are gone during the day, and they don't come back until the evening. So all of those cars are mostly residents that come back in the evening. So I just feel like we might be missing a segment.
Also, I tend to agree with that because even though they may not normally park during regulated hours, they may not understand that they need a permit if they have a day off and are parking on it. So they should be notified so that they know that if they live on that thing, on that zone, they should get it. Just in case, because there could be days that, you know, if they live along a restricted time zone, there may be days they gave off or don't take their car or something changes, so they probably should be
Or
made
work from
aware.
home days.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe it's a weekend.
I think we might be better off doing it in an evening, like on a Wednesday or Thursday at night. You know, for the weekend, I think there's too many people traveling. If we want to hit that outside of the enforcement zone, if we want to go then and put things in the cars, I think the evenings would be best.
Are you scanning their plate before you drop the notice, or you just drop the notice on every vehicle?
No, we're gonna scan the plate.
Okay.
If they've already gotten the permit. I mean, there's only like 150, so we're not
Okay.
gonna get a lot at this point, but yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I sent an email to Matt now, and there was a little bit of confusion online. You know, I tried to clear it up, but I understood why the confusion was created, which is apparently the receipt for the parking thing still said at the bottom, you have to display your permit at all times. And that created a lot of confusion because we were like, wait, all I have is this big thing, I have to put it in my window. So I don't know whether we were able to modify the receipt to delete that line, but.
Good catch. Yeah.
Okay, well, I didn't catch it, somebody posted it online, and I was like, no, I know that's not right, so
Yeah, so
I
we're-
will post,
yeah.
so we've taken care
Yeah,
of it.
that's good. So,
Yeah.
you know, while the new parking system's rolling out July 1st, we've been doing a soft rollout
Yeah.
internally. And, you know, this is new to us also, from the staff standpoint.
Yeah.
And we've not gone totally digital before. And so we are learning. And so you only you only know it's so good until you put it out into the wild, right?
Yeah.
And so it's good to get this
Until you get the
feedback.
user
Yeah, right.
feedback, right?
Yep. So it's good. I just appreciate Chief String and our parking enforcement officer, Paul Frosch, for being responsive and making these updates really quickly and creating clarity.
Yeah, no, I think it's.
And just to be clear, you're only eligible for one of these permits if you live on the side of the street with a 2-hour parking zone. So if there is a street that has a 2-hour zone on one side of the street, that side of the street is eligible for permits. If the other side of the street is unregulated, they're not. So maybe the same block, but it really depends if you're on the side of the street, whether it's a 2-hour zone.
Yeah, this really only impacts the already existing 2-hour zones.
That's correct.
Who used to have to get their permits anyway, so it's just.
Yeah, so I had a question, like, none of the 2-hour zones changed, so I know we got the complaint from the person who's like, hey, I live on one side of the street and I'm not eligible for a permit, but that was always true. right?
That's
Yeah.
always been true,
Yeah,
that has
so
not
it just
changed.
seems- it
That
just
has
seems
not
odd
changed.
that-
Yeah,
Yeah, that has not changed.
that has not
Okay.
changed.
Cause I had somebody else stop me a couple of weeks ago to complain
Yeah.
about it, and I was like, I don't think it's changed for you at all.
That is
And
not a new
the interesting
regulation.
thing is, she actually doesn't own a car and doesn't drive, she was concerned that somehow we were being more restrictive and it was gonna affect the resale value.
We
of
haven't
the house.
changed that with the new regulation, it's the same as it's always been.
Okay.
I would just point them to the process. If they feel strongly about it, they can talk to their neighbors and petition
Yeah.
council to make that a 2-hour zone as well. We have a process for that.
They
There's a
can.
process for that.
And
Yeah.
that's also on the webpage.
Yeah, it is.
So the flyers that go on the windshields, they have a QR code that takes you directly to the information webpage, which has lots of information there.
Yes.
Okay.
There's also a process for removal of a 2-hour zone if the neighbors don't feel it's necessary.
That's right.
Yes.
Which
There's-
council will actually be considering. Yes, I've gotten a request already.
Okay.
So, yes.
Good. I think some of the 2-hour zones were established during a different era of usage in the borough. So it may not, the same level of usage may not, for certain streets, may not be the same. Particularly since COVID changed.
And I think when these changes were put into effect, we had the plan to collect the data for what
Right.
it costs to run the program, the enforcement costs, and so are we able to track that?
Yes, and
Okay.
this makes it a lot easier. So,
Okay.
because the vendor is able to tally all that information for us, versus before it was a little bit, trying to collect information from a lot of different spots. So
Right.
we'll get a much more accurate assessment.
Okay, with that, I'll move on to the next discussion item, which is the school bus camera update. And if you could provide an update for that.
So Lower Merion School District has contracted with a vendor to install and provide service for school bus cameras. And just so everyone's aware, it is a third-party vendor that's, authorized through the state. The state has allowed these vendors to go, receive the video information from the school bus, validate that it was a violation, but they ultimately send it back to the police department for enforcement. Initially, we were in, discussions for the contract with the vendor. The school district has opted to, they're engaged with the vendor through contract, so now we are looking to set up an MOU with the school district as far as how that agreement works and what the expectations are, things of that nature. Since we kind of, not us, but the process took a 180, and we've switched from the vendor to the school district. We're waiting to set up meetings with John Walco and the school district solicitor, just so they can review the MOU and kind of finalize anything.
So this is for placing cameras on school buses to capture
Yes.
violations around the school buses.
Yes, so Lower Merion is in agreement to do that. I believe that they're already installing them, or they're planning to install them. Now it's just a matter of getting the enforcement aspect down.
Right. And then the timing of that?
They're hoping for September. They said they'll be installed by September, so whether or not enforcement begins then is, remains to be seen. Just getting
I
all
think that's one
paperwork
of the biggest safety issues within the borough, around the school buses and the children. We see it time and time again in terms of just cars totally ignoring or
Yeah.
oblivious to what the laws are for stopping for school buses. So I think that would make a huge impact, a safety impact. So I'm happy that's happening.
Absolutely.
Me too. There is we'll have a push before September, just a reminder, as school starts. It is a very expensive violation to ignore the stop signs that are out from a school bus. It's dangerous, and it's expensive. And now we're gonna make sure you get penalized for doing that.
Yeah,
So-
and what is the fine again?
So I don't know what the fine is, because it's not, with this third-party vendor, it's not the standard school bus violation fine, because you actually, the weird thing is you're not citing the driver, you're citing the owner of the vehicle. And the fines were reduced slightly, and there's no license penalties for it. Like currently, if you pass a school bus with its red lights on, it's like $300 fine plus cost, you're talking $450. A 30-day license suspension and 5 points, it's significant.
Yeah, it's really expensive.
So now the fine goes down drastically because it's a civil penalty. I don't know if we can say, I think it's in the 100 to 200 range, and there's no license effects.
It's still not worth.
No,
No,
definitely not.
Right,
but
it's
yeah,
still
just a
not
different-
worth, yeah.
But the enforcement level is going to be so much higher.
It's gonna go up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um, All right, any other thoughts on that? Moving on to the next discussion item, which is pedestrian and bike accessibility. So the Mainline Greenway, I'm actually meeting with Exit Design Group and Lower Marion Township next week, June 20th. And we will be reviewing what they have come up with in terms of the implementation and the design. So I will keep the staff up to date with that as well as the committee. And then the Lower Marion and Narberth Active Transportation Plan update. We are expected to meet in July, and they will be presenting preliminary recommendations and also seeking direction from the steering committee on where to put their focus, because it spans a very large region between Lower Marion and Narberth. So they have to figure out where their priorities are and where their focus areas are. So that will happen sometime in July. And moving on to committee reports, we have the Environmental Advisory Committee, and we have Joe Toscano here to provide an update.
Yep, thanks, Jean. And I can provide updates on the two items on there on the EV charger pilot program, and I can briefly give an update on the CCA as well. So the EAC submitted a report on the EV charger pilot program, which I think everyone has, back in April. I'll just give a brief summary of that, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer that. So, of the we currently have 14 total individual charging ports throughout the borough now. This report included 10 of them, or some of them were either not online yet, or we didn't have the data from them in 2023. So this includes 10 of them. During 2023, there were over 1,300 charging sessions. The average session length was 4 hours, 40 minutes. The overall usage across the entire system increased 41% over the course of the year. That includes both increases from the existing ones and the ones that came online during 2023. So we saw a pretty substantial increase. 246 unique users. Some of those are presumably residents who are using it here. Some might be visiting downtown. We saw different patterns of usage at the ones downtown versus in the more residential areas, as you would expect, if residents are using them versus people visiting businesses downtown. And overall, the utilization rates were very good. Generally, peak usage was in the late afternoon, early evening, across the board, across all the locations. The overall utilization rates were higher than the sort of national averages for these kinds of systems, but not so high that people would have difficulty finding one if they needed one. So we're basically at a good point right now, given the level of EV adoption and usage in the borough and the amount of infrastructure we have available. We want to keep an eye on that moving forward, but as of right now, we're in a very good spot in terms of getting a good amount of usage, but not so much that people should run into difficulty very often finding a charger. Any questions about the usage itself?
The one thing I thought was odd was it looked like the one by the post office was severely underutilized.
That one is the one that, the post office one has the least utilization and the shortest session durations. So when people use it, they seem to be using it just briefly.
It just seemed an outlier.
I thought that was interesting too, just because
Yeah.
the one on downtown on Essex Avenue,
Right.
it's one of the highest usages.
Yeah.
Part of that might be because it's been there longer. People are more used to, people who have been using that one are going back to that one probably. And you see that in other municipalities as well. The longer that they've been there, the more people know that there's one there, the more they go to that one. So that post office one might change over time. There's more people
So as far as usage down, people tend to run into the post office
Yes.
for shorter periods, for 15 minutes, 20 minutes. So it's probably not worth hooking it up, and there's not an awful lot in that particular
Right.
block
Right.
that would call you for more than a few minutes.
Right. It is in front of the medical and
It is.
dental office, but they also have their own parking.
They have the
lot.
right
Right.
parking, yeah,
And-
yeah.
so-
So would it be possible at some point to think about moving that maybe to another, area that would get more usage and
I
maybe
think
converting
moving is
those?
a huge cost.
Huh?
Yeah, there's a
Moving
big
is
cost.
huge cost.
I know,
Um,
yeah.
And I do think Joe might be right that over time, it might,
So let's continue to monitor that, because I think those spaces, because one of the things I notice people do is the free 15-minute spaces often get filled, and so people park in an illegal spot, which makes it hard to come around the corner. I wonder if that's a consistent pattern, is it worth it making those 15-minute spaces for pedestrian safety? And then is it worth the cost of moving it to a better utilized location? And I know it's expensive, but it's a thought.
Yeah, so I would continue monitoring it for now, and we can certainly put together another report for next year, for the data for 2024, and I think we now have data from all of the charging locations. That's correct, Ed?
Yes.
So we'll be able to provide a more complete one too. We also did a sort of survey on similar programs in other municipalities and just kind of how public EV chargers are used more generally. New York City has a very similar program. Obviously, New York City is a very different place than Narberth in many ways, but they have a similar program using flow chargers also with these curbside chargers. And there's a lot of interesting lessons that they learned or are learning from their pilot program as well. So some of that sort of feeds into what you might want to develop as a policy for the location of future charger placements. So one of the things, for example, that they observed in the New York City pilot program is that the ones that get the most usage are in residential areas that are most dependent on on-street parking. Because presumably if someone has a driveway and they have an EV, they are more likely to be able to just install a charger at their home and use their driveway. So that's the kind of factor that we can consider, and that's sort of discussed in the report as well. There were a few other points we wanted to recommend just based on our own observations and other things that came out of this. One is that right now the charging stations are restricted to use by EV chargers from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And kind of to your point earlier about people coming home from work later, sometimes you'll have situations where people in internal combustion cars will come back right at 5 p.m. and they can park there, and then someone comes back in an EV and can't charge their EV overnight. And so we might think about adjusting that time window in terms of when the spaces are restricted. It'd also be good to allow overnight parking even if the vehicle's not charging. I know there's not really enforcement overnight, so it's not practically an issue right now, but you don't want people to have to get up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m. to go move their
I
car.
thought that was actually allowed, the overnight parking, even though.
Is that in the ordinance? Okay, I have to
I
check
think
that.
that's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's
think
great.
so,
That's a lot.
yeah.
I may have misunderstood what the rules were about that. And then last thing is just to also clarify some of the signage. So there's a couple locations, I think, on South Essex, where there's a 2-hour parking sign right near a sign that says no parking except while charging. And so that can cause some confusion if those two signs are adjacent from each other. You don't, as far as I know, you don't need a 2-hour parking permit to use the charging stations
Correct.
if you're charging.
Interesting.
But that, adjusting those signs and the placement of those could help alleviate some confusion. Any other questions?
Okay, thanks, Mr. Do you, Mike, do you have any thoughts on the 24 hours versus 8 to 5?
I mean, I guess my thought is the whole point of this is to maximize the usage. And so limiting the charging times to 8 to 5, in my mind, doesn't necessarily make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to consider the pros and cons of that, because on the flip side of that, it's also, after 5 p.m. is where it's most in demand, I guess.
Exactly.
So if there is already like a parking demand issue on that street, but it's an issue on both sides, for
Yep.
both the EV users and.
And I think this will evolve as
Right.
The composition of types of vehicles changes
Right.
over time too.
Yeah,
So
it'll be greater.
we can keep an eye on that and, see how it goes.
And it also may make a difference if we're talking about the downtown ones.
Yes.
You know, you want those parking spaces to be available for the restaurants and things like that, especially as Hanover gets more developed. It's different for places in the residential areas. Why wouldn't you allow the overnight parking if they're gonna
And it's important
basically
to
come
know,
home,
like,
plug in?
the policy, the 8 to 5 policy would also impact the data in terms of how
Right.
much it is used
Correct.
for charging.
That's right.
Right.
That's a good point.
So that's something to think about as we set the policy going forward. And, did you have any like other update, or were there any other questions on that?
Just on the EV chargers?
No, just. everything
Just like you
else.
mentioned briefly, community choice segregation, just to give you an update, we're up to around 45,000 households around Pennsylvania now, 8 boroughs have signed on. The group has met with PICO again, they continue to have no issues from their end. The petition has not quite been submitted to the Public Utility Commission yet. We're waiting on 2 more boroughs, I think, just to sign off on that. But very soon that should be submitted, and then
Okay.
waiting for feedback from them.
Thanks for the update. And this wasn't on the agenda, but just a quick question, like, we were looking into the gas-powered
Yes.
lawn equipment regulation. I know you guys have done some preliminary research.
We've been doing a bunch of research, and 2 residents have been helping with that, John Weisport and Jean DiSabatino, and they've been phenomenal help. At not the last AC meeting, I think the previous one, there's a sample ordinance that's been developed by Penn Environment that meets a lot of what the EAC would like to see in an ordinance that regulates the use of gas-powered leaf blowers with some small modifications. We haven't sent that to you guys as a recommendation yet, because I'm trying to coordinate with Lower Marion Township to see if they're gonna want to do something similar. Because if they want to go in a different direction with it, I don't want to create conflicting sets of regulations that are gonna cause confusion. So I'm communicating with them to try and make sure we're on the same page with what we're gonna do. But I can send you that if you want to take a look at it. Penn Environment developed it, and it's sort of suited for Pennsylvania.
Thank you for looking into that.
I mean, I certainly want to see what Lower Marion's proposed ordinance is going to look like.
Yeah.
Because as you said, it's awfully difficult to create conflicting obligations.
Part of it is that there's other things they have to consider in terms of types of properties that have to be managed that we don't necessarily have in the borough. So they may have additional factors they need to
Yeah.
consider compared to what we need to do. And we just want to make sure we don't pass a, ordinance that is going to be so different than theirs that it's going to cause confusion for.
Yeah, like my thought is that it needs to be really closely aligned, just because
Yeah.
also commercial companies, they're not going to know where the borders are
I
between
think that's the
Harvard
key,
and
yeah.
Marion.
So I'll keep you updated on that, talking with them.
Okay, thank you. Departmental reports, I know we already spoke to, the fire company report is attached to the packet, I believe. And then the police report.
We did not get we did not get the fire company report
Oh,
yet.
it's nice.
When we receive it, we'll
Okay,
attach it back
okay.
up.
I think you said that, because I don't remember seeing it. Okay.
So with the police report, obviously, we have on there, we're still asking residents to sign up for all our information, broadcast, either Everbridge, Facebook, things of that nature, so we can get our information out effectively. We're sharing information about the parking change for July 1st. Just to follow up on the question for Iona, Jeff was able to send me the information. Before the speed bump, over a 2-week period, there was 14,440 movements. After the speed bump, it was 7,016. So it was a 52% reduction. After the speed bump, we were seeing no more than 59 movements per hour. That was at rush hour, so it was 59 or less. So it was a drastic decrease over what we were seeing before. And to your point earlier, we ran it again, and it went from 3,300 the first time to 3,600 the second time. So while a small increase, it was definitely in line with what we were seeing. The only question I have is, with the installation of the no left turn, is there a prediction on where that traffic's going to go? Because ultimately, we're not making the traffic disappear. My concern that I've expressed is we already have an issue at St. Margaret's during that time frame, 7 to 9, with school buses, parents, and everything else. And I think that if we install that no left turn sign on Iona, we're gonna create a greater issue with school kids getting dropped off, there. So that's my, hesitation with going forward with that installation. So,
I'll have to look into that because I actually didn't do the design for that.
okay,
I just I went to the site and observed what was actually built, but I wasn't part of the actual design of that, so I'll have to look into it.
okay,
I'll get back to you.
thank you.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and with that, I'll open it up to public comments for any general.
Yeah, so John Kistler, 211 Iona. So I just wanted to reiterate, from a resident perspective, there's still an issue on Iona. There were 5 of us here today. There's a larger group that we stay in touch. We actively talk about it, the volume and the safety issues. So if I noticed on the previous report, there's like if you need 70% resident signatures, we'd be happy to get that. We just need some guidance. Okay, so but we would like some more of the recommendations, actively either implemented or, telling us why the recommendations not being put through, because it's still an issue for us. So just please, and then if you have those stats, like I said, the stats that I have in my hand were 450 cars passing my house in a single hour. So
I don't know what, I have to look and see what meeting they were attached to. So it was one of the public health and safety meetings?
yeah, I have it right here. I'd be happy to tell you.
No, the current ones, after the stop sign.
Yeah, it was, okay. So yeah, so how would I know?
I'll meet with you after the meeting, I'll have to find it.
Okay, okay. But again, we still have a concern, and we would like to see what additionally can be addressed. And if you need us to come to the meeting in mass, if you need us to send you an official letter, if you need us to do whatever, we are here and we are happy to do that. And we appreciate it.
Had you previously sent a petition? Because I
Yes.
remember there was like
Yes.
50 signatures or something to that effect.
Yes.
It was before I started. So could you just clarify what exactly that petition was for us, for our knowledge here? I guess, like what was the request of that petition? Just
So there's always been a concern, and this is over a year now ago. By the way, the first group of people to meet, this was probably close to 10 to 20 years ago, I forget, but nothing got done. But then one of the neighbor's pets got hit by a car, and that kind of drove this
yeah.
this issue to resurface. So again, I don't know what you're asking for as far
I
as
guess what I'm asking
position.
is why. So we already have your petition. So I was just asking why would we do another petition?
I'm reacting
Yeah.
to, there was a traffic report that came after our petition,
Okay.
and in the top paragraph of this traffic report, it says, if council wants to implement some of these recommendations, PennDOT recommends that you get 70% of the neighbors to concur. What I'm saying is that's an easy hurdle,
Right.
just let us know,
Okay.
okay?
Mhm.
That's what I'm reacting to,
Thank you.
all right?
I appreciate your feedback. Any other public comment?
Joe Stratton, 402 Dudley, as somebody who's interested in pedestrian public safety, appreciate all the issues going on in Iona, and I always try to avoid Iona whenever I can, and I tell my kids to, just because it's difficult to drive on. And Chief, I share the question in my mind also with the no left turn on Iona, was just thinking, where does that traffic go? Does it end up on Hampton or Narberth Ave? But yeah, I fully support improving the safety of Iona and thinking through, I'm just curious, as a driver who goes down Windsor, my only options to turn are, well, not the only, but Narberth, Hampton, or Iona, and just thinking, where would I turn if I couldn't turn left on Iona? It would probably be Hampton.
And I don't know if there's any hard numbers, but there was a no left there for a long time. I'm going to say 2+ years, and then it went down. I don't know why it went down.
Yeah, that was
The
before.
Mayor Grady put it
Yeah,
up.
I think that was taken down at some point,
Yeah,
but that was before I was on this project.
right.
So I'll
But But there's a noticeable difference in volume when that no left turn is.
During those peak hours when it was regulated.
The peak hours are all day. The peak hours go, again, if you look at the histogram here, I mean, it starts probably 10 a.m. and goes all the way to 7 p.m. Those are the peak hours.
I believe it was taken down just because there was not a warrant.
To
that-
have it.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
have it there.
Yeah,
So
you
it could not
kind
be
of did it
enforced.
without, my recollection is he did it, it turned out he did it without
Yeah.
getting the necessary
Well,
approvals.
However it got done,
Right.
it was effective when it was there.
Quick question for you, do you
Yes, sir.
remember, I sort of remember that the no left turn was only during like 7 to 9. It wasn't all day, is
It
that
wasn't all
right?
day.
It was only prohibited hours.
Yeah.
Okay,
7 to 9.
Okay, that's what I
Yeah.
thought.
4 to 7.
Okay. Well, thank you. Any other public comments? All right, so our next Public Health and Safety Committee meeting will be July 12th. Thank you, everyone.
To adjourn?
And I'll second. All those in favor? Meeting adjourned at
Thanks.
11:06 a.m.
Thanks, members of the public, for coming and informing us. It's always a good thing.